First, we'll talk about meal in education and its importance in the digital age. Second, about meal and human rights and their connection with the right to education. Third, about teachers and meal and their role in achieving meal. In the fourth session, about the curriculum for teachers, which was published by the UNESCO, and especially the 12 modules. And finally, my conclusion. So here is a pyramid that I made with the three concepts of digital technologies in education, digital education, and meal in education. Let's begin with the bottom, with digital technologies in education, which is connected with the empowerment of individuals and the active participation in society. Second, the digital education could connect with the safe online educational environment, and of course, with the improvement of digital literacy. And finally, meal and education, which is a connection that has a lot of benefits from the media information and will lead to the continuity of education through safeguarding students' rights. So all this together could lead to the realization of the right to education for all. And this is why it's important to introduce meal to education and for the protection of the right to education, of course. So here are some rights that are connected with meal and to the right to education, especially. First, we have the right to privacy and the freedom of expression. Personal information, sovereignty, the right to be forgotten, the need for privacy safeguards are crucial, especially in the context of increasing digital surveillance and privacy threats. Second, the right to be heard and the right to be safeguarded from abuse. Digital technologies have amplified marginalized voices and highlighted human rights abuses. But legal restrictions should only be applied to protect other rights, national security, public order, or public health. And finally, the right of access to information. We could say for that unprecedented access to information has created the need for critical engagement and evaluation of sources to counter disinformation. And the most important thing for meal is, of course, the role that teachers have to play into the educational system and how teachers could achieve meal into the classrooms. First, they have to note the importance of the media literacy. They have to develop healthy media habits. They have to learn to students how to navigate the complex media landscape. Second, they have to raise the concern over misinformation and disinformation because of the various channels that exist, and we have to raise the awareness and, of course, to promote the adaptability in emergencies, like, for etc., a pandemic period. Third, they have also to be self-trained and to be professionally develop their skills. They have to know how to teach critical thinking to students. They have to know how to evaluate resources and to pass it to their children, to their students, and to help students discern facts from opinions. Fourth, we need a more systemic approach to meal education. We need partnerships, of course, with NGOs, media organizations, other stakeholders, and we need to bring learning outside the classrooms, and especially to parents and of the whole community, of course. And finally, we need to develop programs and the ongoing assessment in order to teach the necessary skills to students and to know how to evaluate the effectiveness of all these programs. Here are some information about the meal curriculum for teachers, which was published in 2011, and unfortunately, it's not very known in Greece. First, it presents meal in a holistic manner, and it means that it focuses on present trends toward the convergence of all the media that exist into one platform. And second, it launches a catalytic process. It reaches and builds the capacities that teachers need. Specifically, is designed for teachers and for the integration of the meal into the formal education system. So the curriculum area is media information literacy. The curriculum goals is to enhance the knowledge of the whole range of media and other information providers such as libraries, archives, and the internet, and how the teachers can acquire skills like know-how media and other information providers, the use of available technologies to reach different audiences, and to develop, as I said before, critical thinking, problem-solving skills, and to extend them to their students, which is the most important thing. And here is a scheme about the curriculum for teachers to understand better its importance. First, it is about the introduction of MIL and the impact on the teacher professional development. And it shows teachers in their dual role. First, they are, on the one hand, advocates of an informed and rational citizenry, and on the other hand, they are educators in change. So we see that teaching goes from being teacher-centered to becoming learner-centered. And this could lead to make teachers media information literate, and to build the capacities that must pass to their students, the learning to learning autonomously, and pursuing lifelong learning, with the goal to enhance MIL among students, and the ultimate goal, which is to enhance MIL among the members of the whole society. So the curriculum goals and the teacher skills are here. And the first one is to understand the policies which are necessary to promote MIL, to maximize the use of the various media, and to show the classroom as a space which respects different views and the perspectives, irrespective of the background and the gender. Secondly, they have to critically assess the media texts and the information sources. They need to understand the central concepts, the tools of inquiry, and the structures of the discipline of MIL, and to create experiences in this way that could make them meaningful for the students to be their best version as future citizens. And finally, one skill is how to use media and technology to access the information and all the pedagogical knowledge that is essential for the teacher's own professional development. They need to acquire pedagogical skills to learn MIL to students first, and they have to teach from the perspective of the good governance and intercultural dialogue. And the 12 modules are, for example, module 1 is about citizenship, freedom of expression and information, access to information, democratic discourse, and lifelong learning. Module 2 is about understanding the news, media and information ethics. Module 3 is about the representation in media and information, which focuses on the understanding of media power. I will not stand in the others because there are many, but there are 12 modules which could be very helpful for all the teachers. And here is a scheme with the 3 concepts of MIL, digital rights, and digital citizenship in order to show their interconnection. First of all, we have MIL, which is a set of knowledge, skills, attitudes, and competencies. Second, we have the digital rights, which are about the access and use while we are protected. And finally, digital citizenship, which is the ability to use technology responsibly, safely, and respectfully. And all these 3 together theorize and shape how individuals navigate digitally and, of course, safely. And about my conclusion, first of all, digital technologies are more present in our lives than ever before. The era of digital transformation has been replaced by the era of digital transformation and especially of digital transformative education. So we could see education as the key in order to build the important and essential capacities to MIL. And to this regard, MIL in education can be achieved through well-trained educators, the promotion of media and information literacy equips individuals with the necessary skills to adapt in this evolving technological world. And finally, I should note that what we need is adaptive learning systems, a holistic educational framework, and of course, informed citizens. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Ms. Patsuki, for giving me the floor. As mentioned, the theme of my presentation is digital media and gamification. I believe that to better understand the theme, I have to present you with the definitions of what digital media and gamification actually is, followed by the methods and goals it uses, and some of the best practices of games for the social development goals. So, what is digital media and gamification? Digital media is any form of media that uses electronic devices for distribution. This form of media can be created, viewed, modified, and distributed via electronic devices. Digital media is commonly used software, video games, video websites, social media, and online advertising. Whilst gamification is the application of game design elements and game principles in non-game contexts. It is utilized in health, for example, making run, education, and in Kahoot and even marketing and employee training. It uses points and badges, leaderboards, progression levels, rewards, and teammates, whilst trying to achieve further engagement, improve learning and interaction and collaboration, both in the classroom or even in the office space. Gamification in the classroom has been around for many, many years. It is believed that it was first introduced in the early 1900s in the form of Boy Scouts. However, the term was officially coined in 2002 by game designer Nick Pelly. The technology aspect is a very recent addition. In early ages of the teachers rely mainly on the curiosity of the students, which is why later on in universities or in high school, teachers can rely on games, which are known as commercial off-the-shelf games. A few examples may include SimCity in classes of urban design or even Minecraft for early programming. Out of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, gamification is utilized mainly in Sustainable Development Goal 4 and Sustainable Development Goal 16. Sustainable Development Goal 4 focuses on education, which is starting to transform in order to meet 21st century needs. Thus, educators have turned to digital games in order to teach their classes. Whilst Social Development Goal 16 focuses on peace, justice, and strong institutions. UNESCO's take on Sustainable Development Goal was to launch the project Game for Learning for learners above the age of 13. It is utilizes digital games in order to embed students with emotional and social skills, and the goal is to accomplish the Sustainable Development Goal 4.7, following a 5-step methodology. The first step is to promote social emotional behavior through a list of 100 games, followed by the adoption of the Visak Declaration during Tech 2018 in Visakhapatnam, India. Said industry guidelines were then used and introduced to game developers through a number of gameathons, which is hackathons for game developers. Fourth step was the development of games for education purposes and around specific learning objectives. And then finally, the last step is the creation of games for social development goals, a few of which include World Rescue, during which players assist in solving global problems at a community level. And the goal is to gain knowledge and skills fundamental towards making better decisions for the health of the planet. Followed by Florence, during which learners will explore concepts of identity and gender as they journey through the life of Florence and navigate her relationship with cello player named Chris. Next on is diversity, which surrounds intercultural dialogue, conflict resolution, and exploration to promote a culture of peace. Followed by Old Here. During this game, interactions take the shape of conflict resolution challenges that encourage the diversity and inclusivity, intergenerational dialogues based on a conversation between Kutu and his grandfather, and the promotion of peace. Next on is Slates, during which players understand that each choice has a consequence as they play in the backdrop of civic unrest and play as a resistance member, teacher, or policymaker. And last but not least, there is Burying My Love, which is a game inspired by the reality of refugees. It explores concepts such as home, belonging, and identity, whilst following the journey of Mah as she tries to reach Europe from Syria. The Mahatma Gandhi Institute for Education and Peace, in collaboration with UNESCO, the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism and United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, organized an 8-month challenge, which is known as the Digital Games for Peace Challenge, during which 22 game changers were trained in social emotional learning, intercultural dialogue, game design, prevention of violent extremism, and psychology, with the aim to promote peace through creativity, innovation, and resilience. Followed by a very interesting case of schools known as GEM Schools, which stands for Global Education Management Systems. It is an Indian Emirates-based education company with a network of more than 80 schools in a dozen countries. The school strongly focuses on sustainability and is committed to fostering an understanding of the Sustainable Development Goals. And this school has partnered with Twin, which is an educator portal or student app, to create an engaging and interactive learning experience for its students, allowing them to track their performance and enhance their understanding of the school material through interactive games. Some other actions include the Intelligent Global Hub on Digital Pedagogies, which is a collaboration between the Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education and Peace and the state government of Andhra Pradesh to provide knowledge partnership for the establishment of research and design laboratory. The Games for Learning at Tech, which is focused on digital pedagogies for building peaceful and sustainable societies. And the International SDGs Competition for Students, which happened this year from April till June. And last but not least, the 7th Global Competition on Design for Future Education, which is finishing right about now in the next few days. The aim of this competition is to build an international platform to explore future-oriented educational solutions for better educational opportunities. To conclude, gamification is actually a pretty old concept. However, the technology aspect is a new addition. It can be utilized in classrooms, in the workspace, and in businesses. It is a very fun way to learn, and it is very important in the learning progress. It helps students to apply the theory they learn in classrooms into practice, and it enhances their problem-solving ability. Thank you very much for your attention.
of all, I would like to thank Professor Anasopoulos for in the organizing committee of the students of the UNESCO CERN for inviting me here. I would like to give you some perception. As you have heard, I'm also a political scientist, I'm also an advertiser because I'm working in the market. So all this we are talking about is exploited by me, usually, for my living. But also I'm a political educator, so I come in contact with many adults, with many youth, to educate on these things. And from that, my presentation has two actually parts. The first part I will try to give some more elements that it's from my personal view quite important to have in mind about which are the citizens that we are talking about, because the panel was originally called media literacy and citizens. And then my agony, my stress as a political educator, what we should do. When we say internet users, of course, they are not equally distributed across the world. You cannot see the bars very clearly. The first, it's 22.5%. Europe, it's 2019 statistics, because you can't find comprehensive statistics for all the countries together, so you have to go to the closest to our time. The Americas are 77%, the former Soviet states are 72%, Asia Pacific, although it's vast, it's only 48%, 51% at the Arab states, 28% only in Africa. The world is at 53 by then, 2019. Now it's already in almost 63. The developed world was in 1987 almost, and 47 the developing countries. So you can see that there is a great disparity in the access of internet. And we are talking about individuals using the internet. It's not only about access, because access can be everywhere. This is the age distribution of the global world by February 2024. As you can see, the three main parts, almost 80% of the global population that uses internet is under 44 years old. The rest is almost 26%, something like that, for the rest of the age groups, which is really scary for the other people, for the elderly. They don't have access, they don't use the internet. They are gradually cut off from media and information access. So, in Europe, we have 84% of people using internet. And if we want to go a bit more, I would say, pessimistic, we can see that in southern Greece, we have 20% of the population that have never used internet, never in their life. This is Eurobarometer from 2022. Calabria in Italy, 8.7%. North in Portugal, 17.8%. The islands of the Aegean and Crete, my place also, because I'm from Rhodes, 16%. Never used internet in any kind, in any capacity. Three regions of Hungary, and then Sicilia and Bourgogne in France. As you can see, the south is suffering with internet access, actually usability of the internet, using this amazing tool. So, in general, what I found from my perspectives here in my research, developing countries still are very low on internet usage, but that means also underdeveloped regions across Europe and the developed world, so we don't have a uniformity in internet usage. Internet access is positively correlated with the freedom of speech and democracy in a country, usually. It's not absolute, but also limited access and free internet usual. It's usual to countries with tradition of controlling the media and limiting the freedom of expression. It's a typo. EU citizens' media habits. This is the latest Eurobarometer 2023, the data we have. People trust, watch more television. Still, television is very dominant across all, almost all age groups. Online news, 42%, radio, 37%, social media platforms, 37%. And then it's other news. As you can see, printed media is not included in the top. It's very low in the sense is how people actually inform themselves. The trust towards online news and social media platforms is up 11 percentage points in comparison just in 2 years, from 22 to 23, increased the trust, according to Eurobarometer. So here we have what media people use in the past 7 days during the research they did across Europe. As you can see, TV is the front, then we have online press or news platform, radio, social media platforms, written and printed press, only 21%, video platforms, messaging apps, podcasts, blogs, none at all, don't know. If we go to per age group, which is the first column, you will see that from 25 above, the dominant medium is TV, while when you go below 24 years of age, up to 15, social media platform is 59%, where they prefer to go and what they use to actually have access to news. There are also various disparities comparing to gender and education, which is quite important, but we don't spend time for that. The next slide is how they usually access news online. From where? The first one is they go directly to the website they prefer, they trust. You know, they have a website, CNN.com, NGR, whatever everybody has. You read articles that appear in your online social media networks. You use a news aggregator app, Google News or other that they have. They collect various forms, various articles, and they have also very AI-generated content for clickbaiting, which is usual. Via notifications that you have registered for, newsletters, apps, they provide news and alerts. Content shared by friends or directly through messaging apps, newsletters, and other. If you go again to the age part, because we are talking about also generation views, above 25, the dominant procedure is to go directly to the website that we trust and we know. Below 24 is through social media networks. So you can see again, this is the trend that's going on. And then we have which online platforms. Facebook is, of course, the top. WhatsApp is quite popular, especially in the Western Europe and United States. YouTube, Instagram, Messenger, TikTok, Twitter, Telegram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Viber, and others. If we go again for the dominant medium per age group, above 25, it's Facebook, more than 65% to all age groups. Instagram is 76% in the 15 to 24. I would like just to be provocative and ask, how many of you young students have actually both Facebook and Instagram? There are people without Facebook still. You know, once when I was in Europe, close to your age, 23, for me to be on Facebook, which just was releasing in Greece, it was innovative. Now, usually your age, 18 to 22, actually registers to Facebook because they need to come contact with elderly people. Right? Yes, this is the reality. As an educator with youngsters, I face that a lot. So, generational disparities. Young adults have totally switched from traditional media to image-oriented and short text formats. That's very bad for the information because information in so much little quantity or very open interpreted medium like an image is not actual information. It's very bad quality of information. And also, young adults trust in high percentages influencers that come from the Eurobarometer and not established media. And especially the Eurobarometer specifies Cyprus, Malta, and Latvia. And as we know, especially in Greece, an influencer, Phidias from Cyprus, took almost 20% of the elections and got elected in the European Parliament. So you can imagine this becoming not just a dominant trend in the in information and news section, but also politically. Stefanos, of course, exhausted the matter about cultural disparities, but I would like to point what I have been feeling quite a lot when in my work in the field, working with young people, etc. English is the dominant language in the content produced, especially in the developed world. Everything is either translated to English or accessed to it from English with English platforms. Anglo-Saxon perceptions and values become passively imposed to a growing audience. When you see a million police procedurals or court drama, etc., you get a notion of law, for example, that is not European or in our tradition, is Anglo-Saxon. You are relying a lot of the jury, not to the judge, etc., etc. So all this is a cultural impact that we have directly from all of this, because all these are dominantly English, Anglo-Saxon, American, and UK. All these massive online platforms are private sector entities. They are not state. They are not public goods. Internet access is public good. Facebook is not a public good. We will discuss that a bit later. Within totally different legal jurisdictions, political systems, and censorship systems. Telegram is actually Russian. TikTok is Chinese, well, Singaporean Chinese. Who controls it? All this, who is behind it? Some entrepreneurs, some states, who is access, who fights it? All these people are not aware of because they just go to Facebook. But Facebook is not some benevolent entity that promoting progression in the world. It's an enterprise selling things. And we'll discuss about that in a bit. So despite all these geographical and age disparities, the current projection says that by 2030, just in 6 years from now, 90% of the global population will use internet. 90%, 7.5 billion people will be online. And what statistics usually disregard when talking about media literacy is that when you're educating yourself online, you're not only about reading something, you're always also about entertainment, communication, entertainment, get together, consumption, because you buy a lot of stuff directly. You just click an ad and you buy something. It's not, I have to think of it. All of them intertwined in one. It's one experience, one access on Facebook, and you are customer, subscriber, reader, even producer of content. So now I go to the political educator part. There is a whole need to have a whole new approach to redefine the internet user as a digital citizen and a digital consumer, and upgrade all the rest to digital citizens and digital consumers, because this is the way that society will progress. A digital citizen is entitled to access to information and internet, network neutrality. Do you understand the term network neutrality? We access internet through networks. Who controls the networks? How he controls the networks? The prices, the states should remain outside of promoting specific streams to be streamed, like giving priority to Facebook instead of Twitter, or a Medium website to be more easily accessed than another one. So it has to be totally network. And of course, we have the traditional rights: freedom of expression, freedom of association, right to education and work, right to have content in our own language, right to privacy and data protection. What we have always to keep in mind is that all this Internet of Things and everything is created by people with certain values, certain mindsets that reflect them when they build the technologies, and they even unknowingly, they impose their personal views on the final product. You see the tremendous shift on Twitter X under Elon Musk compared to the previous situation, the founding situation. There are general challenges. People are not aware of their digital human rights. As usually, they are not aware of their fundamental human rights. Here we have many legal students and professors. People are not aware about that. We try to educate them on their rights. They don't know what they are, even what they are. People are not aware of their obligation to exercise and protect these human rights, either fundamental or digital. People, they don't trust usually the state or the national governmental organization for the human rights protection, because there is in general, there's a small disbelief according to these institutions. And people dismiss their human rights as irrelevant, non substantial, romantic, idealistic. It's just things that should be there, although they govern the world for the past 2 centuries, almost. So, Internet as a technology, providing access to information, content, which is news, films, entertainment, and communication among peers. Peers means equal partners. It's not something irrelevant. We are not just clients. World Wide Web, which is the evolution, the previous evolution of Internet, is how information content is being made accessible to these peers. www.wom.gr, for example, for the website here. World Wide Web's www's content is being produced. The content itself, states, international governmental organizations, institutions, businesses, and with Web 2 that we live now, with users. Everybody, every single of these one peer is potentially a producer of content. Your comments in a nice article in Facebook is content. Your post, your photography from travel is content. Anything, your messaging is content. We should be aware about that. The access to the targeted World Wide Web it should be part of the right of access to Internet. Access to a social media platform is not actually a right because it's a service. As we use a social media platform, any of the ones we saw before, we are actually a contracted user of a service provided by a business. But it has to be clear. It's not public good. It's not like the power in or the water. It's a social media platform. Somebody controls and provides it to make profit. And in the portion of profit, things are not always very transparent or good. The citizen with access to the internet in its simplest daily form is actually a consumer using a service under specific terms and conditions. We are not members of the Facebook community as they sell us. We are actually contracted clients of the Facebook or Meta Inc. nowadays. And for that, we have to be very aware. So for the average internet users, our capacity as such is actually that of a consumer, not of a citizen or just a user. As a client, we gain access to a service provided by a multinational company, usually based outside our country, because Facebook, Meta Inc., all these are based usually in the United States or China, agreeing to terms and conditions that we never read. Who read the Instagram conditions? No one, no one. Really? Not even the lawyers inside here? No? And in exchange for that service, we provide our content, we entrust our privacy to them, and all our relations to this private sector entity. It's like telling all your secrets to the periperas, to the kiosk in your neighborhood. It's the same thing. But we do it voluntarily and with very ease. And that's what we fail to consider. So the average internet user is a consumer who actually uses his rights as a bargaining mean to a service. It's not only about our content, it's all about rights. It's about our privacy. It's all about being an association. We entrust this application to products, expression, association, privacy, as I said. Our content, our preferences, our insecurities, our searchings, our exploring the internet, everything we do is personal data. It's become data, and from this entity, they use it to provide us with a personalized experience. We discussed about information, the quality and quantity information. The problem is that it's not only that we have an over quantity of information. The thing is that although this quantity is open, now we are being served only portions of it that some algorithm or very clever machine, I won't call it intelligence yet, actually uses to make us more susceptible to advertising. And in some other cases, to political decisions, because that exists. So the personalized experience that we view in our ads, in our what content, what posts Facebook delivers, Instagram delivers, which channels that we follow comes first, etc., means that we have only content that the algorithm decides that is similar to our preferences. We have only ads that that's more likely for us to purchase something, a service or a product. So things that we should buy more easily. It's not always bad, but still. And we are prompted to develop new relations and interests similar to what the algorithms decides. You know, the proposed friends, who to follow, all this. This is not innocent. This is not clear because the most dangerous thing about that is we don't know how the algorithm works because all these companies are private entities, so they are not open, they are not transparent. We don't know anything about that. They just somehow do it work. How? We should know because it's our data used there. So this personal experience entails very specific risks that the content of the platform is served by ways the user we are not actually aware or understand. We waive our rights for a large portion of them to even our intellectual property. Anything we publish on Instagram and Facebook, it's actually co-owned by us and Facebook. Actually, we have only the rights of the creator, not the rights of commercial exploitation. You should know that. In order to exercise our only rights, like the ones we all have entitled, and we are being bombarded with ads that make us more susceptible to consume, sometimes without discretion. So at the end, all this personalized experience means that the user is deprived of the pluralism and diversity of available content. I really miss the periods of the internet that was discovering things. Now I'm just served things. So it's like I was a free lion in the jungle and now I'm in a chicken house, literally in a cage. I'm not out of bed, I'm just in a cage, fed up with information that my owner prefers to feed. You see, we are not free actually with all this overabundance of actually quantity of information. We transform the exercise of our rights, expression right, blah blah blah, etc., to consumable, tradable goods. Our data, our preferences are tradable goods for these companies. Facebook sells our data. Google sells our data to third parties. Thank God we are actually in European Union, which has some very specific rules about that and fines them quite heavily usually. Really glad every time this happens as a citizen, EU citizen. But I don't know if it's enough still. I don't know if you agree with that. And the problem is that us as user, we can easily be manipulated, not only for our consuming habits, but also for our social and political behavior. So add to all this, what us as citizens are unaware of, data safety and client safety. We don't know where our data is. We don't know how we are actual clients because we don't read the contract we signed, because we signed the contract. We have all this transparency of handling the data. We have a serious digital tools illiteracy. We don't know anything about how to properly use all these tools. We don't know how their preferences, the settings. We are given with Swiss knife and we just pose it for photography. We have all the internet's malevolent powers, as we say it, the dark web, the hackers, the secret agencies, anybody that wants to do bad work in the internet, and they do exist. We have all the intellectual property matters, because we have, even most of us download, sometime we have downloaded illegal matter, so we violate some other contracts with the cultural production companies, or our own works become fed up to the AI without any our actually consent. We have the multinational aspect of internet, and for the legal part, multiple jurisdictions, which is quite severe. Multiple jurisdiction means that where are your rights being defended? When you have a problem, can you sue Facebook for anything in Athens? No. The easiest part is to go to Ireland for the subgroup that they have there. So you're not protected. And if you want to seriously do something, you have to go directly to United States courts. Are you capable of, as a client of Facebook, to go to US courts? No, you don't have the money, the experience, or the access actually to this kind of courts. That being said, and I'm concluding, we have to reflect that we measure the world against the prototype of Western democracy with a liberal market, and this is where we live, but the rest of the world does not live in this kind of democracy of liberal markets. They are much more controlled and not so benevolent. The citizen trusts his safety to the state and its laws, controls to elections, and exercising his right. So we do it properly. And also the consumer controls the market with his money and how he spent it, which is our two tools. And we don't do it well as paparazzi because we have all these problems. So how we strengthen the digital citizen in the 21st century? We return back to basics. We focus on the education of youth to become, because youth is actually the problem here, the greater risk, because they are the future adults, to become responsible citizens with human rights and rule of law awareness. They have to be aware of their rights. If they don't know they have rights, they cannot exercise them. And also we strive to develop states and institutions that are trustworthy, transparent, and reliable in our protection. And also we have to develop the digital consumer of the 21st century. We educate the youth to become responsible consumers, so they know the contract they have signed to, but are aware of the power and implications each choice they make entails. And we promote the regulation of large corporations to operate in more transparent and open ways. And hopefully AI will help on that part to discover how they work actually. Lastly, in order to have people that exercise, promote, and protect their digital human rights, we need to become people that respect the rule of law, respect self and others' human rights, consumes in a responsible and fair way. We are technologically educated. We operate under a shared digital etiquette that we don't have. Thank you very much.
So let me introduce myself. I am Professor Hainoglu, Kayoki Hainoglu. I'm a professor of international law and international institutions, and I specialize on protection of human rights. And I have a particular like to cultural heritage, and this is the reason why I am presenting something on cultural heritage and misinformation. By the way, misinformation is it's a tactic, it's a tool that is being used to erode trust to institutions, and it is also harming democratic processes that are very well institutionalized within countries. Now, having said that, misinformation is also a major issue for cultural heritage. Usually when we're thinking of misinformation, we're making the connection with scenarios that relate, for example, to security. We're thinking of how people can be influenced about perhaps the elections, but it's also affecting cultural heritage, and it's also affecting cultural heritage bearers. Cultural heritage in itself, it has the ability to weave links between people, between generations. It's a unique product of humanity. And cultural heritage is beyond material. Of course, it has this intangible dimension. UNESCO has a number of conventions protecting cultural heritage. So far, we have seen an interest, for example, on the part of UNESCO in employing media literacy to protect cultural heritage, and we have seen that, for example, in the case of wars and armed conflicts. But we also have new strands of research with regard to how media literacy can help us with cultural heritage, given the fact that we have the evolution of technologies along with the extreme use of AI. I think that AI is taking place, it's happening, it's being used too quickly right now without actually having set the boundaries, how it can be used ethically speaking, legally speaking, and so on. Now, cultural heritage in itself is identified as an integral element of cultural identity, whether that is a group, whether that's a community. It also has this intergenerational aspect, so cultural heritage is associated with the identity of persons. And for this reason, cultural heritage, when it is being attacked by misinformation, it can say in a negative way or in a different way the identity of a group, the identity of the community. It can also influence the decisions of such a group or of such community. And I will be giving out examples with regard to that. It is also in itself, misinformation, a violation of human rights when it is related to cultural heritage. And in specific, it is a violation of cultural rights along with the right to freedom of expression and freedom of information. I'm going to give a couple of examples with regard to misinformation and cultural heritage and how they can be connected. Let me tell you that a number of researchers coming from other disciplines, when they're talking about cultural heritage, they are very particular about the authenticity of cultural heritage artifacts. So such a very obvious example with regard to misinformation is how other people can be claiming, for example, ownership of cultural heritage, when we're talking about cultural heritage artifacts, for example, or monuments, how they can present half-truths regarding the origins of such heritage. And of course, this is also affecting and it's creating animosity within other groups that have an interest in such cultural heritage. Let me tell you that across the Balkan countries, there are a number of cultural heritage artifacts that are classified as contested heritage, because there are various groups that are claiming ownership or relationship to such cultural heritage. And we also have in other disciplines, for example, in the heritage management and in archaeology, the question about fake cultural heritage reconstructions and how they are being put forward out there. And I'm talking, for example, cultural heritage reconstructions that may be taking place because a war has taken place and something has been destroyed, like a temple, like a church. But it's also about whether such cultural heritage should be rebuilt and what is the narrative that is attached to this cultural heritage that's going to be reconstructed. Because at the end of the day, many experts have raised the issue of how injustices may be perpetuated, given the fact that we will be having reconstructions of cultural heritage and the narratives that will be circulated. So this is one of the examples that are related to cultural heritage and misinformation. If we move on to the next slide, I am giving you another aspect of how misinformation can influence cultural heritage and the cultural identity of a group in itself. And this is very much related to how cultural topics, how topics that are affecting particular groups in societies, how they are being represented or how they are being manipulated, especially through the social media platforms right now. And we have seen that in a number of occasions, especially across the United States or even Britain, when cultural topics are being talked about in a way that is trying to create animosity within groups, influence groups, how they're going to vote, how they're going to behave, and so on. Black Lives Matter, for example, is such a case of how cultural heritage, and I'm talking about the heritage of the black communities that has been sidelined within the US, how it can be related to a social movement in itself and how social media can be used to advance claims or to create misinformation in this context. And by the way, a number of experts, they have been talking about cultural misinformation and cultural disinformation, and the distinction there relates to the fact whether there is intention behind what is circulated when it is fake news on cultural topics, and disinformation is about actually having the intention to disinform a particular group and to create animosity and mistrust towards institutions, the government, and so on. Thank you so much for moving on. The social media, AI is a particular way of circulating such disinformation content, and this is something that is usually used because of the low cost and how it can influence in a very speedy manner the actors that are being targeted. And of course, we also have to bear in mind what are also the political issues in a particular country when we have such campaigns that are relating disinformation campaigns with cultural heritage issues or cultural issues. And such an example, if we move on to the next slide, it has to do with the elections, for example, if you can move on to the next slide, please, with the elections in the United States, or how we have seen protests taking place across countries because of animosity that has been created. And this has been actually pointed out that it has been run by Russian actors, whether they were state-related, state organs, or whether they had some kind of involvement, engagement with the Russian government. So this is another angle that I wanted to bring to your attention, and now I will move on because I'm running out of time to the next aspect that has to do with colonial cultural heritage and misinformation. And it's also about how we have been experiencing cultural heritage and how we have been witnessing this new movement towards decolonization of cultural heritage, talking about how cultural heritage is sidelining or omitting particular groups across countries, or how we have been encountering social movements that are trying to cancel such cultural heritage that was so long accepted. So these are aspects that have been taking place, and we have seen a particular role for the cultural institutions that they are playing in trying to decolonize the institutions and tackling misinformation. Yeah, let's move on to the next slide. It's about cancel culture. It's about the claim whether cultural heritage that has colonial roots or has been advancing colonial practices, whether it can be erased out of humanity's collective memory. And cancel culture is something that is a product, and it's a very unregulated actually product of human interaction with such claims. For me, this is very important because it's raising ethical issues about renegotiating history, renegotiating our cultural heritage, and whether it's actually done in a participatory process mode, which should be done given the fact that this is how it has been synthesized. Okay, we can move on to the next aspect, is with regard to the use of social media and how they're tackling misinformation with regard to cultural heritage and the cancel culture, which is, for example, we see online protests, we see the petitions of people being signed online by a number of people, for example, in order to remove, let's say, sculptures that have to do with slave traders and so on. But in these cases, we never have the chance to actually answer questions that have to do, for example, what are these cultural heritage artifacts about, what are they representing, who are the authors, what is the context, what are the opposed sides, and it's lacking all this democratic participatory process, which in effect is what misinformation is targeting. Misinformation is not necessarily targeting the people as such, it's targeting the institutions, the processes that we have established within countries. So this is how it is related to cultural heritage. And of course it can take other, it can have another form, and we have seen that in a very obvious example coming from Britain, which regards an alleged misinformation campaign that is being run by the British government, for example, with regard to a road network that is being built around Stonehenge. So it doesn't have to be the external actor, for example, Russia, another country targeting, for example, Britain, but it can very much be an internal actor like the government targeting the affected local community that is the cultural heritage bearer, that is the cultural heritage holder. And there is a very nice written statement that has been submitted to the British Parliament, and I have the link therein that you can read about misinformation that has been run by the British government towards whether there is a benefit or not regarding building this road network. By the way, the British government wants to go ahead with this road network, disregarding what the local communities believe about it. And this is what is happening during peacetime, but we also have cultural heritage and misinformation being connected also under the context of war and armed conflict. And we have seen that because traditionally, throughout the centuries, cultural heritage has been attacked during war. It was either a pillage, something that the enemy soldiers would be looting to take back, or it can be related to the fact that it can be something that is destabilizing the society, it's erasing its identity, and the occupiers can build up a new society, a new state, and erase them. And such examples have been used. We have seen the extreme use of social media, and that has been actually done especially by ISIS, even the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Whenever cultural heritage was attacked, was affected, that was how animosity, great animosity, was created towards the American soldiers and any other allies. And of course, we have seen that with the case of ISIS, especially in Iraq and in Syria, they have been recording such destruction of cultural heritage in order to claim ownership over the country, over the territory, and not only that, but also to send out the message that they are fighting idolatry and that they are clearing out the cultural identities of these territories in order to build up the caliphate. So you see, misinformation campaigns are taking place not only in peacetime, but they are also taking place during wartime. And this is why media literacy is so relevant in this context during peacetime and wartime in order to deal with such misinformation campaigns. Now, I think I will stop here and I will excuse myself because I'm running a little bit late. Thank you for listening to me. I'm sorry that I had to run this really fast with you, but my presentation is available and you can email me, get in touch with me in case you have any questions, because I won't be able to stay around for the next hour. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mrs. President, for giving me the floor. Here's the structure of today's presentation. The presentation will cover definitions, the relationship between MIL and GC, focus on UNESCO's role and initiatives, as well as the challenges of implementing MIL in education. First, let's start with some key definitions. Media information literacy, or MIL, is a combination of media literacy and information literacy. It focuses on evaluating and using media as an information source. MIL has evolved with technology, especially with advancements requiring knowledge and skills for effective media use. As the changing environment of today's digital age demands a more progressive approach, MIL goes beyond traditional models of media in helping people verify facts and use trustworthy sources. It requires a critical assessment of information. It's about understanding information in context and recognizing biases, particularly in the digital landscape of artificial intelligence and large language models, which are complex mathematical representation of language allowing computers to generate human-like text. Global citizenship reflects the growing interconnectedness of the world. The term combines global, implying no territorial boundary, and citizenship, implying membership to an exclusive collective governed by a central authority. It encompasses belonging to the global community while facing common challenges, promotes an inclusive ethos for a shared vision of a better and more sustainable world. Also, it highlights the need to bring awareness and action to common global problems such as climate change and inequalities. The need for global citizenship arises from the increasing recognition of common global issues and challenges. It becomes meaningful through fostering a spirit of voluntarism and commonwealth. One of the key aspects of global citizenship education, or GCED, is Target 4.7 of the Sustainable Development Goals, which aims to ensure that by 2030, all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development including, among others, through education for sustainable development and sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace and non-violence, global citizenship and appreciation of cultural diversity and of culture's contribution to sustainable development. Global citizenship is the umbrella term for all kinds of actions of globally minded individuals and communities worldwide. It represents individuals as members of diverse local and non-local networks. Universities have the responsibility in teaching students about the global community and its contribution. It reflects the social responsibility for the benefit of all societies, which leads to an international community with knowledge and skills for sustainable development. Through MIL, UNESCO promotes global citizenship by emphasizing the importance of MIL, establishing a global network, UNESCO MIL Alliance for All, in addressing the challenges of the information society and supporting international cooperation and partnerships in the digital literacy era. As a result, UNESCO advocates for sustainable development of MIL on a global scale. UNESCO's role in MIL reflects on the UNESCO MIL Alliance for All. It constitutes a global network of members, working groups, and committees, promoting MIL across various sectors through multi-level strategies like UNESCO MIL Alliance Awards, in which UNESCO capitalizes initiatives and projects in the field of MIL and recognizes excellence and leadership in 5 sectors: education, research, policy, advocacy, media and communication, information industries. Global Citizenship Education, or GCED, is a multifaceted educational approach that includes 3 domains of learning: behavioral, socio-emotional, and cognitive. Global citizen education is a way to promote a broader sense of inclusion in a global community facing common challenges. It aims to develop a sense of urgency to address these challenges and promote a sense of solidarity and collective responsibility to overcome the inconsistencies attributed to the varying local contexts in which the term is applied. GCED can serve as a tool to integrate global citizenship into the educational process and also promote global awareness and cooperation to solve global issues. GCED is an umbrella concept for environmental education, civic education, and development education is a comprehensive reality through which we can practice global citizenship in various learning environments. Media information literacy has an empowering impact on global citizenship education. It enables critical thinking and effective use of digital tools and aids making informed choices in peace building, equality, freedom of expression, dialogue, information access, and sustainable development. Also, it emphasizes the 3 essential elements of MIL. According to the Gilser's model of information, a model which highlights 3 key aspects of information and information resources in literacy education: connecting with information, interacting with information, and making use of information. UNESCO's vision for a new social contract for education calls for a transformative approach to education. The contract is a metaphor, a hypothetical thought experiment that imagines individuals coming together as rational and self-interested parties who can agree on the rules and terms through which to design a legitimate social and political order. It envisions the transformation of individuals as future literates. And here are the 5 entry points of this project. Through these steps, the new social contract for education aspires towards a future where education becomes a catalyst for positive global transformation. SD and GC is a multi-dimensional concept. Sustainable development is a core element that balances environmental, social, and economic constraints. To ensure a fair and just society, education for sustainability and global citizenship, especially schools' role in identity construction, helping them to form universal ethical values. However, further research in the overcrowded school curricula and educational programs is needed for the integration of these concepts in education. Also, through career guidance, community-based services, and popular culture in media, adult learning also occurs in communities. Transforming education for global citizenship and sustainable development is a lifelong pursuit which shapes mindset for caring for humanity and planet. It keeps individuals with global competencies for responsible actions, aims for promoting just, peaceful, secure, sustainable, tolerant, inclusive societies. It is a transformative lifelong process which involves curricular learning and practical experience. Leading efforts to this direction perform organizations like the Global Citizenship Foundation, a leading organization specialist for SDG 4.7, education for global citizenship and sustainable development, and the Mahatma Gandhi Institute, a research institute for SDG 4.7 focused on promoting social emotional learning or SEL, innovating digital pedagogies, and empowering youth, all of which reflect its vision of building kinder brains. However, despite the progress, adult learning and education faces challenges due to social and cultural context. These several challenges that remain in implementing UNESCO's main principles for GC include technological and economic disparities, overcrowded school curricula, social and cultural barriers. Efforts on education in sustainability and global citizenship education must continue to address these challenges and ensure that meal becomes accessible to all. There are many examples of how meal or GSED have empowered individuals and communities, from schools, universities, workplace, also through career guidance, community-based services, and popular culture and media. These efforts have helped people to become more informed, enabling them to contribute to the global good. In conclusion, the principles of meal are essential in GC for critically assessing information and understanding diverse perspectives for intercultural education, fostering a global community informed, engaged, and responsible. As students, educators, and global citizens, we can drive positive change by embracing meal values, especially the youth. Together, meal linked to education for GC, for global citizenship, aligns with UNESCO's foundational mission, as stated in Article 1 of its constitution, and empowers individuals to contribute to peace and security by promoting collaboration among the nations through education, science, and culture. Thank you for your attention.
Good afternoon, everyone. Really pleasure for me to be here today, and thanks a lot for this invitation to be part of this conference. My name is Alina. I'm the new head of unit for Media Information Literacy at UNESCO HQ in Paris. I started in January, and since then I've been working on many different fronts, but I wanted to speak about one thing with you today, about a new initiative that we have started, and for which I didn't really prepare a PowerPoint, but rather hope if you want to also have a conversation and a discussion about it. And tomorrow I'm actually having a more presentation with the PowerPoint. So what I wanted to speak about today was the new role of digital content creators and influencers in the information ecosystem. So, you know, at UNESCO, we've been working for so many years on the promotion of media and information literacy, in informal education. We've been working, and we had really fantastic presentation before about the global media information literacy curricula, the work that was done with teachers, informal and informal. But we are also working with different categories of stakeholders in the youth organizations, be it any kind of like the media organizations that would support the dissemination of media information literacy skills and knowledge and competencies within for everyone. But one of the starting points of the reflection this year was a series of research that were conducted. First, there was a research from the Financial Times that was published last year about the growing reliance of people, especially the youth, to access information through digital content creators and influencers. There were some additional research that were produced from I think by the Reuters Institute as well, in their digital news reports that confirm those figures that right now, of course, the majority of younger population is accessing information through social media, but on social media, one of the main way of accessing information is through the influencers and content creators. And this is a rather not so new phenomenon, but still what has changed is that content creators, and we call them influencers, content creators, one of the reasons is that we have had conversation with them and many of them don't want to be called influencers because they think it's a very negative connotation. I don't know, here in the room, if many of you are actually also relying on these kind of stakeholders to access information. I don't know what is the setting in your country, in Greece, if you have also a growing number of influencers, content creators that go into not just entertainment, but really the sharing of what we call public interest information. But we have a growing number of examples where we see journalists, the blurring lines, the journalists are moving from the media, traditional media, to social media, while we also see a lot of young journalists, but they don't want to be go that way, that starts as influencers, content creators, and work on news reporting. So this, we've realized quite quickly that this brings there are a couple of reasons first to explain that. And what the research has shown is that people need more and more, because there has always been this growing distrust, which is getting better in traditional media. But what people need is the personalization of the relationship of, when accessing information for them, the personalization is very important. And that explains why as well there is this growing tendency, which was the case and is the case with the TV news program that were also very much personalized. But right now with social media there is this growing personalization where people believe in someone and not anymore necessarily in an institution. So this has really triggered some questioning. But for us at UNESCO, the biggest question that came to us was that in 2023, we organized a very big conference to discuss the governance of digital platforms. So basically, increased transparency, the accountability of digital platforms. And we had thousands of people that participated in that conference, but absolutely or almost no content creators and influencers, although we were trying to bring them on board. And we didn't understand, because content creators and influencers, their business model, everything is actually related to the governance and the governance system of platform. So this really triggered a lot of questions to us. On the one side, there are like growing influence. On the other side, they are not taking part in the global conversation when it comes to the governance system, which is for them the basics of how they are functioning. And of course, they are being accused increasingly of a lot of issues. We heard about disinformation, but they're being accused of disseminating a lot of disinformation, a lot of distrust. And at the same time as well, what we've seen is that they are very much targeted by hate speech online. So we started saying, okay, we have to do something. These are really like serious challenges, and how we are going to address that. I think some of the issues when you go to the side of the youth that is relying on them is very much related to the fact that what probably those that do not have enough media information literacy skills would not see or would not understand that these content creators that act as journalists or as new gatekeeper of public interest information, they do not necessarily have the knowledge and skills related to freedom of expression, access to information, and they are not really having this proper understanding. But these were some things that we were assuming. So what we have started in January, we started making a partnership with the Night Journalism Center of America, with the University of Austin. And we invited around 10 influencers, global influencers from across the world, to spend days with us and to discuss this relationship between journalists and influencers. We had with us Dylan Page. I guess you probably don't know necessarily, but he's the #1 on TikTok for news. So he has like really more than 10 million, even more, of followers. We had Hugo Decrypt. So this is like, I'm based in France, and in France he's really a phenomenon because he has become #1 journalist for the country, but he's an influencer de facto. He defines himself as a YouTuber. But he now made the headline in the US and everywhere about the fact that he is now the most famous journalist, and really a lot of, I would say the majority, and maybe Divina you can say if I'm wrong, but the majority of the youth is accessing information probably through him, like a large majority. So we spent time with them, and it was absolutely fascinating because we realized they were very frank and very honest about their knowledge and how they are. And when we asked them, so I remember asking to Dylan, what do you know about freedom of expression? What do you know about the standards in your country? I'm thinking he has millions of followers. What do you know about defamation? What do you know about, libel? And the answer was really absolutely nothing. This was the answer. So we were really like, it's not that, this is something we thought that would be possible, but we were like, this was a confirmation, and they were not really, how to say, they were very honest and very transparent about that. And someone like Hugo Decrypt similarly said that he didn't have any knowledge, and he didn't consider himself as a journalist from the beginning. So the conversation lasted for a few days. We've made a lot of recording, and based on that, we came to realize that one of the major issues that we're facing is that we are right now with new gatekeepers of information that have a massive impact on our younger, especially the youngest one, but we see as well, like, for instance, now TikTok, there is a growing statistically as well, like around the 30-40 that is also like increasingly using TikTok. So we decided to start working on a course to empower the influencers with media and information literacy skills. But we also, before that, have launched a global campaign to measure the skills on media information literacy of those influencers. So this campaign is actually still running. So if you look at our webpage or on the social media, feel free to actually help us disseminate it and spread the word. It's something that is until the end of the month. We really hope to have good data to really prove, because what I was just saying before was just on a discussion with a small group of influencers, but I wouldn't be surprised that the same kind of experience are going to be like we will have probably the same results with the bigger group. So now what we've done after that was to build a course for them, but not only for them, but also for journalists. Because one of the lessons of that day that we've spent, of these days that we've spent with them, is that we brought journalists as well together in the room. And after that, they actually were telling us, oh, but we realized that we're standing on the shoulder of giants, because these are the people that are taking risks, these are the ones that are actually being able to, that are committed to standards, that we need to reference the sources of these journalists, we need to be, so they were very much respectful of the work done by journalists, and at the same time, the journalists started to understand the added value of what these content creators have been doing, basically making information much more accessible and managed to reach out to much more people than the journalists, the traditional media have done so before. So the course now is really meant at targeting these two to really reinforce the relationship between the journalists and the influencers. And just one story I wanted to say, we also did an experiment in between. So we did a newsroom during an event that we organized on climate change, and we brought influencers together with journalists to spend together 3 days and work together. And in each group, they had to work together, one influencer, one journalist. And it was really fascinating because after one day, they were really angry at each other because the influencers were all the time asking like, oh, but what is the source? What are you talking about? And the others were like, the journalists were saying, oh, the influencers are terrible. They have such a, like big head. They are very full of themselves. But after 3 days, and still now, I think they've made such good connections that they've really like learned to work together and see the added value of being together. So this was, and this is really like the objective of that course, is to really promote media information literacy, bring together the media, but also these new stakeholders that we call the influencers. And we hope in the end that those content creators and influencers can act as multipliers for disseminating media information literacy skills, but not only. Because what we really hope as well is to have them in this environment and in this information ecosystem, which is increasingly not dominated, but where there is a lot of disinformation, where there are a lot of harmful content, to make sure that they are more accountable. But in order for them to be more accountable, one thing is sure is that they need some skills. They need to understand their role in this ecosystem and what is freedom of expression and what is access to information, how to protect their audience, how to protect their readers, etc. So this will be the theme, by the way, of the Global Media Information Literacy Week, which is going to take place the last week of October. And there is a global conference that is taking place in Jordan, in Amman, but is also going to be accessible online. And the topic of the conference is about these new gatekeepers of information, of public interest information, and how it is important for media and information literacy to address these new stakeholders. And I was just talking about the influencers, but of course, if we speak about who the younger generation are relying on to access information, they are the influencers. The other one increasingly is generative AI. So this is going to be as well the second part of the conversation we will have in Jordan. So if you're interested, you can register. It's very easy. You just go UNESCO Global Meal Week 24. And you will see, you can you can register for the conference, and then you will get a link to connect to the conversation. And we will really have some sessions only with influencers to speak about the challenge, their role and commitment to media information literacy, but we will also have some session related to generative AI, etc. So that's what I wanted to present to you today, and I don't know how much time because I didn't look, but feel free to ask any question, if any, and otherwise, Divina, the floor is yours. But
thank you. Thank you, Professor Intercultural. I'm going to destroy your names, I'm sorry, because I'm not familiar with them. This meeting is partly organized together so as to introduce your chair, the chair where you're a part of, to the larger MILID network, the network on media information literacy and intercultural dialogue. And you can see how intercultural policy, there's a lot that is potentially deployable there. And that's why I'm glad also Madame Hulin from UNESCO is attending, because I think the more we are transparent about the way we use our energy and our engagement on the ground, the more we'll be able to scale up. And scale up across Europe, scale up across other countries that are like us, middle-range countries, Greece, France. We can have affinities with other middle-range countries. We have the same problems to solve, etc. So I'm going to drop the employability part, unless you want to bring it back in the discussion, because that will come tomorrow again. But I was inspired by the talk from your prior professor on cultural heritage, because what strikes me is how much media literacy, the policy field, has changed because of disinformation. And so what I'd like to propose to you is that at the moment, disinformation is a field configuring process. It is compelling us to change. And I'll just take two elements that's come up in the conversation: journalism, media literacy practitioners. We could add the emergence of influencers in that. They come out also of disinformation, lack of trust, who to trust, peer-to-peer, internet as a mega peer. It's all part of the same nexus that we are seeing now. How does it work to be a field configuring or a field reconfiguring process? It means that organizations and policy have to change, and then the actors and the projects and their programs change also. And maybe you recognize some of the things that happen in your field. So in some ways, when you look at it from this perspective, so disinformation, what does it do? Not all negative. In fact, we can see mutual benefits emerging from this fight against disinformation, new actor emerging, etc. And in many ways, you can see that in the field of policy, and you can see that in the field of programs and projects. For instance, in media and information literacy policy, huge in Europe, there is the directive on audiovisual media services that makes media literacy compulsory. All the states have to apply it. That's one of the reasons MILID, the MILID chair, the MIL unit is also growing, is that there is a policy obligation with reporting, monitoring, So this is big because it empowers the actors, but also obligates the states. Greece is going to be compared to France, it's going to be compared to, I can say England, no, Ireland, or Finland, or Sweden, or Lithuania, hi Lithuania, not Brazil yet, but we are comparing to each other, we're trying to see what works, what practices are stimulating or not, and so policy is interesting from that perspective, but it creates obligations. It creates institutions, new institutions. For instance, in France, in Europe, again, we have EGMO, the European Observatory for Digital Media and Information. In fact, when you look at EGMO, it's all about the fight against disinformation. And it brings another actor that we've never dealt with in media and information literacy, which is fact checkers. But you know what? Journalists have never dealt with fact checkers either. They're a new job. Fact checkers, not unlike influencers, will tell you, we're not journalists. Because what happens when you bring these new proposals, this new funding, this new energy, new norms, new standards are created, and all norms, all standards are displaced. So for instance, journalism, the journalists will tell you, hang on, the verification, that's the core of our job. Guess what? They're not trusted. So fact checkers come and say, we're doing it externally. We're not fact checking in the newspaper. We are creating a platform, call it Vera AI, call it Check First, etc. New actors coming in. And we're going to do it our ways. And we're going to create a canon. Oh, and suddenly you have EFCN, the international platform for fact-checking, created as a network by Americans, but that now has a spin-off in Europe, etc. And so there is this creation, this mutual benefit coming in of canon creating, canon building, same thing in terms of displacement for media and information literacy. Here we were with UNESCO, with the Council of Europe, media literacy. Yes, it's about citizenship, it's about critical thinking, but it's also about creativity, it's about identity online, it's about fun and games. Somebody among you, among the students who was presenting the teacher's framework. Well, with this information, guess what? Media and information literacy is all about risk. Policy loves risk. Politicians, if there's opportunities, if things go well, there's no benefit in doing anything, right? You see what you're saying again. Politicians will only react to risk, because then they have a role. They have to protect their people, they have to protect influencers, they have to protect journalists if they're under attack, etc., etc. And so, at the moment, media information literacy, and some of us who are very old in the field realize it and bemoan it. Media information literacy is about cyber bullying, fake news. Help me, what else do we do?
Deep fakes.
Fake, deep fakes, exactly. So it's all about just answering the emergency of the fight against disinformation. So being swallowed, if you want, in this fight. But there are, and it's about information disorders at large. We talk about polarization. We talk about the theft of public trust, etc. So information disorders have stolen the whole thing. Our norms are being reconfigured to fight that. And all the fun part of media information literacy is gone. Boring. But that's what we are. So what I'm trying to see is how they work together and how there's mutual benefit and how it has created new things. But you see that it has displaced the perspective. We've moved from a much more balanced approach in journalism as in media literacy about some facts and opinions to opinions mostly in both fields and how to find that. Okay? So disinformation has reconfigured our field. Okay? Is that a good thing? I think I've showed you that yes, we've created a midweek. We have new institutions on huge level, etc. But it's bringing us challenges also when you go back to the profession and what was its core attitudes and its core needs. Media information literacy at the moment, when you look at it, it's news literacy. It's all about news. And again, that is not what we are. It's all about inoculation. Oh, if you play this game, you're going to be able to protect yourself against fake news. The game that Cambridge University developed. So all theories about effects and impact are re-emerging that we thought, we researchers, had been discarded because we know that experiences, practices, are better than a one-shot inoculation. Media information literacy, as a school, takes time, cannot be improvised. You have to build up a curriculum. You have to make it year after year, just like any other education. And so we are at risk in media literacy because of that. Reduction to news literacy, important as it is, and don't get me wrong, but it's a reduction. And it can also reduce the groups we work with. We work with librarians. They're a huge actor. Information specialists, librarians, they're out. We work with youth workers who help young people who abandon school and come back, and because they are brought back into the school system thanks to the engagement dimension of media literacy. So these are the risks and the challenges that we have to deal with. When we talk about journalism, digital journalism is at risk because it's being reduced to fact-checking. And journalists are saying, but hang on, now with all the AI and all the digital tools that we have, we can again do internal fact-checking. We can do it within our profession. And as a result, what you see is a big resistance from schools of journalism that do not want to create courses about fact-checking. Because they say, we've always done it. And more problematic research. Fact-checking is an echo chamber for fact-checkers. And there's no proof of efficiency, it's not transparent, it's not sustainable. Those fact-checking networks are supported by guess who? Facebook and Google. So the sort of so-called independence of journalists, the so-called independence of fact-checkers, at the moment, Facebook, which is to say the cause of the problem, largely, is funding the supposed solution to the problem. There's something distorted here, and that it may not be sustainable. Google is funding the research in Europe on media and information literacy. Yeah. They've created a fund that we've tried to make more neutral, called EMIF, European Media and Information Literacy Fund. It's mostly for fact-checking cases and for fighting disinformation. 25 million given by Google. And at the moment, there's no other donor. And this stops next year. We are inventing in Europe new ways of funding through Creative Europe, etc. But they never have an entry that is about media literacy. The entry is fighting for democracy. Yeah. So you see how it is reconfiguring our field, and we have to deal with that. So these are the elements I wanted to discuss with you. And more importantly, and this is where I am at the moment with a lot of researchers, we are very annoyed at information disorders because they are hiding the rest of the forest. The rest of the forest is information, information quality, information integrity, information growth, development, trust. And so we really have to be careful as researchers, as policy analysts, to the consequences of this disinformation field that is redistributing our forces and our strengths and our energies and our research. To remember that this information hits about 4% of the population in the country. It's swallowing all the attention. We need information in all the rest of the fields, sciences, politics, etc., etc. So we really should push back. we have been on the defensive on these issues. They've taken us a bit unawares, honestly. But we have to push back and put forward again information quality at the top. And to circle back on what William was saying, midweek this year, the theme is about information integrity. It's putting the emphasis on the platforms. It is pushing back. It is using our institutions, policy, collegiality, understanding across nations to push back and send a different message that the real fight is about information, because that's where all our knowledge comes from and all our decision making comes from. Thank you.
Well, coming after such speeches is a little bit of an issue here. For those old generation, they reminded me with the concert in 1968 or 69, where the headliners were the Mamas and Papas. So, so there's a zoom on Mama Cash, because before them on stage is Janis Joplin. So she goes, wow, what on earth am I going to do after that? So this is exactly how I feel here. So that's one thing. And on the other hand, the other issue is that during those 2 days, there are so many interventions which covered a lot. So I'm just taking out things for what I expected. But at the same time, a number of things that have been mentioned, it was food for thought for me. So that in that respect, I've just outlined them here. So I said that might be useful in order to explain things. So what are we going to do here? And I would like to explain some things because it might sound a little bit out of focus in a way, but it's not for me personally, because in order to follow up what I was going to say, you have to bear in mind that what I'm presenting in a way is from my own perspective of my role. And this is the role of heading the Annalyn Foundation network in Greece. So in that respect, in a way, I'm a scientist as well as a practitioner. And in that respect, I might be trying to sell you my product, which is the intercultural dialogue element. So this is basically the two major elements here is a region, is the Euro-Mediterranean region, and the other element is the application of intercultural dialogue as a mechanism, and this is the important thing, which I would try to say that, yeah, it's a policy, it's a mechanism, it's a tool, but at the same time, and maybe this is the best way to approach it, is a mindset. So once we see this one, this might be more convenient, more comprehensive to understand this one. The other thing that I wanted to say, which to make things a little bit easier, I've noticed, and probably with all due respect, that a lot of you have a background of law experts and lawyers. So my joke would not insult you, because even my daughter is one of them. So the joke goes like that. A big firm announces a newspaper, and they say that we would like to hire a one-handed lawyer. So everyone's saying, why on earth would you like to hire a one-handed lawyer? And the answer is simple. They said, well, whenever we ask him about something, we want his advice, his intervention, they will say, on the one hand, this is the case. So that's what I advise you. But on the other hand, this is the other thing. So we are left with nothing. That doesn't apply for the coin. The coin has two sides. And this is exactly the kind of condition that I think it's what the intercultural dialogue is all about. And I believe that one of the things that I mentioned would give a very good example. So in that respect, the first issue is that the applicability of intercultural dialogue by the Annalyn Foundation. My interest is not to illustrate the merit of the Annalyn Foundation, but the merits of an intermediary, which is the Annalyn Foundation. For those who know, it is a governmental organization, part of a Euromed partnership as such, who was established because there was the realization that if we want the political security and economic and commercial basket of the Euromed partnership to go ahead, we have to invest more on the cultural and societal or human perspective. And this illustrates that this is only the basis of this one. And this is in a region, and probably this is the point, I would like to give a little bit of hints of some of the characteristics of this region and why this mechanism can fit in and why this, at least it was implemented as such. What is the Euromed region and what is, let's say, the burdens that such a region carries with it in terms of the policymakers in Brussels or in the other countries? So, first of all, is the burden of history. This is a history of interaction between those two regions, very rich, very volatile, very explosive, and very, it's really a mine which is full of explosions that might really, any sparkle might explode it. There is, the Mediterranean Sea can be seen as two things, either as a bridge or as a border. Because the two sides also, there are a lot of things that connect them, but at the same time, there are a lot of things that divide them. There are political and ideological differences, there are financial differences, but religious, and in a very important and a very crucial way, because on the one hand, you have the role of religion, on the one side, a very powerful, very influential, very mind-setting, vis-a-vis the European side, which is more secular in its orientation. It's not the lack of religious aspects per se in the European side, but it's the predominance of the secular perspective. And at the same time, there is an interdependence because of the two regions. So the question is like, why do we need, how do we interact, and whether if intercultural dialogue is an issue, why do we need it in such a region? So the obvious answer, of course, the answer is because we can find for different regions with this migration of historical precedents, the presence of the other, which tends to be of religious origin, of cultural origin, of linguistics, and so on and so forth. And therefore there is a need, which this per se, this presence of the other in different manners and formats is, and because of different reasons, it's not that the presence per se is the reason for those problems, but it might lead to radicalism, to xenophobia, to Islamophobia, to anti-Semitism, and to other aspects. And I'm using it as that, I'm not saying that's the reason for those elements, but this might be an excuse or something that assists in their creation. So in that respect, we have the presence of the other. Yet, the first issue, and if we take it historically, that we tend to, all of us tend to see those units or those different cultures and entities through the spectrum, through the angle of the states. So we tend to see them as an interstate issue. So in that respect, if that's the case and that's the approach, then the way that we're dealing tends to be through those official channels, and therefore, because of the need for coexistence in a very creative or in very a win-win situation, we have the state as the major actor, probably a realist paradigm, and those is the use of public or traditional diplomacy, of cultural diplomacy, and so on and so forth. Gradually, we have seen an evolution to cultural relations, and the relations at large. And in that respect, we have seen evolving. So probably this is the format that you might say the interaction, apart from the commercial and the other business sector, business-like sections. But I'm just concentrating in what might be of interest in terms of culture. And I will come back to why culture. So this seems to be the case. So the question is, what if we have those instruments which seem to be functioning fairly well or not? Why do we need something, a new mechanism, the intercultural element, let's say? And here I would like to add, first of all, that the intercultural dialogue as a tool, as an instrument, as an approach, we have to see it in an evolutionary perspective. It came later after those mechanisms that were mentioned earlier on and other ones. And it's first of all the recognition that the societies in both sides, even though I would see that it's more in the north, are multicultural fabrics. So in that respect, because of this absence of knowledge, or because of fear, because of different elements, there is a need to deal with it. And those elements and the multicultural, or the acceptance of the multicultural fabric meant a multicultural approach, which was the recognition of the existence of the other, yet it stayed over there in a way. So what does really, I'm just simplifying things, and I chose this one because we've heard too many times the notion of intercultural dialogue, interculturality, but I'm not sure if you know it. And through my experience by teaching to Americans, I realized that it's essential to go back to basics. So once you realize the basic elements from that which all those phenomena are all about, then you can understand them, then you can have boxes and put them, and take the box and put the things into perspective. So why intercultural dialogue, I said, and what does it really add? So intercultural dialogue had two important elements. Culture, that's it, and the second one is dialogue. So culture, why culture? What's the importance of culture? And taking it from the perspective of the Euro-Mediterranean Partnership initially, and therefore of the Annalene Foundation afterwards, then we have to see that culture per se is much neutral as a notion than others. It functions independently. It covers too many aspects. It is very creative in its approach. It's an open system, I might argue. And the perspective, as I've said, it does include completely diverse, in other perspectives, elements from art and letters to cultural heritage to human rights to environmental issues, whatever is considered as a culture. For the sake of argument, I remember when we talk about with the Goethe Institute, said it is in our culture that we are stronger and we have to offer the benefits and share the benefits with you, at least in our center in Athens, for instance. Hospitality is a notion, it's a cultural element, which is not always treated if we approach the notion of cultural arts and letters, and of course cultural heritage and so on and so forth. The other important element, as I've said, is dialogue. And this is, I would start actually the other way around and mention what that Mr. Hulin mentioned, and this is very important. She mentioned that the friction or the different approaches between, on the one hand, the journalists and on the other hand, the influencers. But what she did end at the end, she added in the end, yes, but at the end, they managed to start understanding each other and work more productively. This is the essence of dialogue. Dialogue, they have two sides, both sides, that have different approaches, and for dialogue to exist, there must be an end that we have to reach, and that, there are two ways to look at it, that at the end of it, both sides have actually lost. That's one way to look at it. Or the other way is that, or more important, that both sides have moved at the end of this process, have moved away from their initial position and they got nearer to each other. And this is, I think that's my understanding of what you have described. So dialogue is the other element. So intercultural dialogue is exactly the process through which we instigate dialogue between, not necessarily opposing, but let's use the one, things that are not understandable for each other, and therefore through the dialogue there is it's a very dynamic process that allows for this, for those things to have the different entities from all sides to exchange views, to be honest, to talk about it, and therefore gradually understand each other better and get nearer. Yet, there is also another very important element, and this is vis-a-vis the notion of relations, which cultural relations tend to be between entities which tend to identify as an ethnic or this one, but definitely it's from one unit to the other. And this is a very important element here, is that intercultural dialogue does not refer to nations, states, or entities. And therefore it can be applied domestically. And therefore, so if we want to go back to what is the interaction between the European and let's say the Middle Eastern side or the Mediterranean side, we can see it that it takes place at the state level, it takes place within the countries because we have immigrants, refugees, but not only that. We have to remember that we have students who are studying because in a way, Europe is very attractive to them, not only for political reasons, for political and opportunities and life being. It's also because it has a very good educational system, at least for those who can afford it, along the lines. And those, I mentioned this one because those students are not, some of them might stay over, but a lot of them will go back, and therefore they will operate in a different way, and therefore they are very important as agents of this interculturality. And of course, we have also, by now, because of a lot of activities, a lot of funding of projects, they work together, NGOs, universities, other sectoral institutions, and so on and so forth. And therefore, then we have the hybrid space, or shall we say the virtual space, where we have the coexistence and the merging of this one. But that's the interstate, let's call it this way, element. But there is also the completely local one. And when I'm mentioning, and this is the added value of intercultural dialogue, we also make a reference to subcultures. I tend to use the term tribes. So the journalists, or the diplomats, or this one or the others, they are a tribe of their own, with their own language pretty much the same, with their own approach, and in certain cases we cannot understand. I remember when I did English, I was learning English, they said, well, one of the things that we have to learn is the use of titles in the newspapers, because it's a different language per se. It doesn't really apply to the same rules that we can find in books or other literature reviews. So that it means that there is a different approach to some things that we tend to see as similar. And now the intercultural dialogue on the other side, what are the other elements that make it unique, or at least very important? First of all, it's the acceptance of diversity. We mentioned this one. But at the same time, diversity is not seen as a problem, but as an asset. This is a very important element because it can offer, not only it can offer different perspectives, but because by dealing them as if, sorry, I will have to connect it with the other important element. It's diversity as an asset, but one of the most important elements is that in a dialogue, there are equal partners. There are so no distinctions can be made based on supremacy, claiming supremacy over cultural elements, over financial elements, over whatever you want to make it. So it's this dialogue takes place accepting that there are equal entities. And by saying that, I'm not saying about Greeks and Turks or Egyptians, but I'm saying smaller groups, marginalized groups within a community or within a city, minorities within states, linguistic minorities, religious minorities, sexual minorities, and whatever. So all of them are regarded as equal, and they have a word to say. The other element, because of this one, as a result of this one, is that it tends to, there is whatever comes out, whatever we agree, whatever we build, because this is one of the characteristics of this approach, is that in order to build bridges, not only we create opportunities for them to participate, but those equal entities are the ones who are formulating the projects, whatever initiatives, and therefore there is a process of co-ownership. It's something that we build together, and therefore, and definitely, I think many of us have experienced, there is no better way to understand the other by working together. And this is why, at least I am very skeptical about the virtual world, because it doesn't offer you the face-to-face contact that those mechanisms offer you, and it's only there. And I'm talking about our personal experience, what has been my perception of a Turk once I got to know them, I got to work with them. And as a Greek, of course, we have whatever educational system we have been brought up with. It's not only that I had to go through a rational thinking and rationalize things. It's that the Turk is not a Turk anymore. It's Imam, it's Ozal, or he's a very individual person. Just mentioning it, I'm just doing a loop in a negative sense in a way, is that when I went to Auschwitz, for me it's an experience that everyone has to go through it. I didn't see, because we have been exposed to movies, to books about it, I wasn't really touched. I said, okay, yeah, that's Auschwitz, it's terrible, blah, 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 but fine, so what? I mean, not so what, but anyways. So we went to the crematory. When this one, everyone was freaking out apart from me. And then I went into the barracks when those people were staying, were sleeping. And this is when I felt that I'm losing my ground beneath my feet. Why? Because it was full of pictures. No matter numbers anymore. It was this lady who was that age when she went there and she died there. There wasn't anything impersonal there. Every single picture was a person, was a live person and not a number. And this is essential, and this is why this whole system that's why the third basket in the European partnership is culture and society. It's culture, it's a human aspect as well as the cultural. It's the individual and the community as well. Those are the combinations of the two that will produce whatever this one. So, those are the elements which comprise the intercultural dialogue. So, there's a question here because many of them, we discuss it and we say that we practice it. How easy is it? Do you consider yourself those who have done any projects, or do you have met people that you are practicing intercultural dialogue, and whether it's easy? And I'm just saying is that for me, in order to understand it, we have to deconstruct it and understand a little bit that the process is not that easy, and this is why the intermediate institutions are becoming important. Any input from the youngsters primarily? None? Another thing I forgot, the cultural dialogue is not consuming ethnic products. Going and watching thousands of Korean movies, it's nice, you might get to know a little bit better, but it's not in the cultural dialogue. Eating Chinese and Indian food is great, but unless you go further in and interact, you wouldn't be able. It is nice, it is good, it might be useful when you started asking a question, where does it come from? Why is it this shape? And you need someone else to explain it from that perspective. What are the rituals and the cultural heritage elements that are related to these cultural products that I'm consuming? And again, it needs the other side in order to move on. So, if you got into the ground, as we've said, in order for intercultural dialogue to be effective, and this sounds very easy to work, there is a very important element which we tend to ignore or actually leave aside. If there is no shared set of values, important values, then there is no future in such a dialogue. And the question is here, well, which ones? How will we create this basket of values that we agree upon? And this is where it says, those set of values have to be either jointly developed through interaction, during a bottom-up process, or are at least commonly accepted universal values. And this is one of the tips that in many cases we are very critical, or some of the, shall we say, autocratic regimes in the area, especially in the third world countries, we claim that, this is the human rights, charter and this one, but this is not what we share. They have signed the contract. They have been signatories of the United Nations, so they cannot claim something like that, because they have been part of these universally accepted values. Because of that, and then I'll get into the important elements of the dialogue, which are not very obvious, is that if it's successful, and that's why it's applicable domestically, it can contribute to an advancing social justice and cohesion. And this is the added value. But for this intercultural dialogue to function, there are some elements that when you read in the beginning, they are not present there. First of all, we need intercultural competences and skills. As I've said, even the beginning of a dialogue is essential. That's why the ice-breaking mechanism in such events are essential. So in that respect, it needs the intermediaries again of the instructors in order to lead such a process. And because these competences include creative ability to encounter other peoples and convert insights and challenges into innovation processes and new forms of expression. And basically, the ability to foster understanding and then cultural empathy, which is very essential, principles and the principles of acquiring behavioral components. Remember, with different ways of expressing our gratitude, which might be interpreted negatively on that side, and that's why in many cases we feel very open. And this is where, of course, previous knowledge and intercultural education is essential. And this is the third element, and the third intercultural education is essential as a process. But how it's done, this is the different element, because who formulates the curriculum, who is the instructors who deliver it, and but it is essential because it leads to acquiring knowledge of the other cultures, installing patterns of availability, openness, and the dialogue and how we perceive the dialogue, and empower and stimulate people to be active and contribute positively. And this brings us to a different issue, which is the perception here, is that if we see that in a societal and communal way, the other important element is that we need active citizens. And this is where the notion, and I think the next speaker is going to talk about or shall we say, global citizens. So intercultural citizenship, which really brings in the personal responsibility of individuals within such cultural diverse societies. As we've said, this implies active citizens with knowledgeable about their obligation, supporters of constructive civic values and democracy, and that's why intercultural dialogue is also related to democratic values and assisted in that respect, and of course social justice, equality, human rights, and so on and so forth. Wow, this is great. You listen to it and say, this is it. And then you go back and say, yes, but we are talking about the Euromed region. How are we going to apply those things in Egypt? Well, Egypt might be the case, but what about Syria? What about Libya? What about Iran in the future? Maybe Iran is better. But what other countries, autocratic regimes? What about Russia looking at the other side? So this is the other side of the coin, the limit of the applicability of this one. Now, who applies it? Who can do it? And through the Anna Lindh Foundation perspective, as we've said, and even the European Union is really pushing, and the Council of Europe and other institutions, they see as leading mechanism civil society organizations. When we talk about civil society organization, we mention it in a very wide interpretation of the notion. I'm not going to get into the notion of what civil society is all about, unless someone would like some explanation. But in any case, they are viewed because of the independence from the state, because of their very large outreach nationwide and region-wise, because of their mindset, they work with creativity and the ability to develop programs and deliver. But as we've said, there are some certain challenges to create limitations, and this is why this institutions like the Anna Lindh Foundation become important. And this is because the other element, or one of the challenges, or one of the weaknesses of this system is that the level of development of civil society, the level of the development of educational system, the level and the quality of media, which is perceived as one of the major partners within this endowment of the Anna Lindh Foundation and the Intercultural Dialogue, are essential. In autocratic regimes or limited democratic and quasi-liberal regimes or non-liberal regimes, you can imagine how much freedom they have in order to function properly and deliver. And this is why it requires a lot of maneuver around the case. And this is what exactly it comes as an institution. So one of the major challenges is exactly the lack of skills, the lack of knowledge, but also because, for instance, in the cultural dialogue, very important it would be whether it can reach the schools. But if you want to reach the schools, state institutions are essential. And therefore, an institution like the Anna Lindh Foundation is becoming very important because it maneuvers in different perspectives. It's an intergovernmental institution, and that's why it can broker agreements with the European Union, it can pressure, it can be an intermediary between the institutions and the local governments or governments at large. but also it can offer safe space and environment for other more weaker institutions in the South. This is, it offers, the mechanism it works for is that it gives opportunity, it gives funding, it transfers skills, and all of them from a bottom to top. So all those skills, capacity building and skills are among its own members, and therefore there is an important element of ownership. There is the European Commission is the one who's funding it, and therefore it works also as an advocate, influencing policy makers, so on and so forth. Having said that, what's the knowledge, the capacity that the civil society organization has? And this is why it's essential that we have, and this is such institutions are not working exclusively with this one. There are key partners like local authorities, media outlets, academia, university, because of the skills development, and they work together in order to produce the tools that are essential over there. This is the major characteristic of this one. One other important thing is that we have in certain aspects, what I'm arguing many times, and Michalis is part of for my family in a way as an early foundation, is that in many cases we tend to preach to the believers rather than to the non-believers. How can we, the major problem in many cases, how can we really touch and how can we really reach the marginalized groups, the marginalized groups in different notions. In that respect, one of the if we see the immigrant or the refugee communities in one countries, we tend to see them as grouping in different ones. You have a very hardcore group which doesn't want to be integrated or doesn't want to become part of the society. You have a group which wants to be assimilated, and you have the ones in between who would like to become citizens or active presence in the country, but they still would like to remain this one. So you have different ones, and the power and the culture of those communities might be an obstacle or a help out in over there. So you need a different language, and this is where it comes as an added value to have mechanisms that can, such partnerships, I would call it partnerships rather than only one-sided, just want to reach over there. So this is the way that it can function and it can offer. Just, I will not go into the details because it's very huge. Under the Anna Foundation offers a lot of such programs of minor opportunities for learnership, but also tools, which is essential for this one. And one of them, realizing the connection between the cultural dialogue and citizenship, it does have a mechanism that I think I'm going to share with you what dialogue is. It's intercultural citizenship education handbook. So this offers a whole mechanism of trainers who can be applied from youngsters in secondary school to higher education with different open systems. And if you go through it, you see how complicated things are, and it's not that simple. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try that. I'm saying if you really want to apply it, take a little bit of time, go look into it, try to find those mechanisms and become a trainer in itself. This mechanism itself provides also training sessions in order to apply for it. Just, I will finish actually with two things and then open the discourse. No, sorry, we have to relate it to media and stuff. First of all, Mrs. Hainoglou mentioned the cultural heritage element. This is really gives me the opportunity to see actually the intercultural dialogue in practice, and especially what I consider that it's a matter of mindset perspective rather than only a tool. So, two examples. One of them in Cyprus, you know that's the divided island. So there is an institution which was established, so there is a co-ownership of the Turkish Cypriots and the Greek Cypriots. And their role is to revitalize and rebuild cultural heritage monuments on both sides. So they work together, it's their obligation on both sides, and each time they work with one and then they go to the other one. Same one, the other. The initial Initially there was skepticism, but then it succeeded. The other, which becomes more relevant to this one, is a documentary about a song. It's called Whose Song Is This One? This is a rabbinical song for the Greeks who knows it, which is claimed by Turks, because it's performed in Turkish, by Greeks, performed in Greek, by Serbs, performed in Serbo-Croatian, and by Bulgarians. So, as I've said again, the coin. One said of it, no, it's Turkish, no, it's Bulgarian, no, it's Serbian. So is this a dividing element or is it a unifying element? So one way to look at it. Of course, the answer might lie in education, history, the common space which was called the Ottoman Empire, the mobility between peoples, and so as I've said, and it's very interesting if you see it performed in a place that this becomes not a dividing factor, but a unifying factor. I was once, I had the experience of being in Istanbul in one of the, in a second floor actually, a coffee place where there was a group of Greeks with Turks, and they were performing some of the rabbinical songs, both in Greek and Turkish. So it's a matter of perspective, it's a matter of mindset rather than anything else. So I will finish with any relation that you will find out in any relevance to the media, literacy, and so on and so forth. As I've said, first of all, for such institutions, for such mechanisms, media is an essential, a very important partner because it influences people. When I'm saying media, I will include the influencers, I will include all the body of people that can really formulate opinion, can influence the perspectives. Just an example of how dangerous this is, and the difficulty in some respect is I think it was last month, the riots that we have experienced in the United Kingdom. This was based on a misperception of the event. But this also indicates another element is the use of such events for certain reasons. So in that respect, media is an essential element, but also we have to go back and realize that being interculturally educated, it sounds as a safety mechanism. But then I'm just sometimes questioning whether it's not the lack of empathy, it's not the lack of understanding of the other side, but the intention to use in such a way. So I'm just giving two different examples where the limits are there. Charlie Hebdo in France, where the question how it is interpreted by the other side, and the need for a dialogue of things that might hurt or insult the other side, but also the cartoon crisis back in 2005, 6. I don't know if you know it. It was one very conservative newspaper that published some cartoons which were very provocative, very insulting to the prophet. First of all, in that respect. Now the question, where censorship on the one hand, or the misuse of some elements is there, it needs a lot of discussion and a lot of clear-minded dialogue in order to reach, because if we want to live, if the reality of the future is that intercultural cities are, or multicultural fabric is the main fabric of most of our societies, then there is no other way but to understand each other and find solutions that have mutual compromises. And in any respect, if we have, and I will finish this one, if we have the respect of a predominant culture domestically, for me it's also an essential element. But at the same time, it needs to be open enough, and that's why culture is essential, because if you want to integrate it, the notion of this national culture, national identity, national identity will change over time. So a new one would be a fusion of the existing elements within this society. I will stop here. I hope I wasn't too bored, and I'm open to any questions you want, if you have any.
Our library realized very early on the necessity of training students in media literacy. So the last year we have been conducting media literacy seminars after training ourselves. We defined notions like these malinformation concepts, fake news, clickbaiting, hate speech. So we try to increase the critical thinking of our students, to enable them to evaluate the information they take and evaluate social media content, to think before share, and effective ways, tools for identifying and avoiding them. Media literacy seminars strengthen the democracy, critical thinking of academic and scientific resources, better decisions for our community. Because why? Why? Because votes were manipulated. False articles or videos led people down dangerous paths, and spreading news has not been cross-checked, creates misconceptions with unforeseen consequences. But libraries should be proactive. So very soon we realized the necessity of adding new topics to the information literacy seminars to avoid fake news and identify the right and reliable sources. We couldn't do it on our own, so we are creating now new seminars on sustainable development, because on my thesis we realized that only 66% knew about sustainable development goals, on climate change, financial literacy. So the target groups were for undergraduate students and secondary school students. So we will cooperate with our departments. And for financial literacy, the knowledge and skills needed to make important financial decisions. Financial literacy is having a basic grasp of money matters, and it's four fundamental pillars: debt, budgeting, saving, and investing. Vulnerable people are women, immigrants, kids, teenagers, retired persons, new parents. I kept a lot of definitions from Mr. The previous speaker concerning responsible consumers, data safety, client safety, lack of non-transparency. So we took this decision because the reasons that led us to these thoughts are the data itself, as it is proven by the EU, the OECD, and the National Strategy of Greek Ministry of Education, that large groups of vulnerable people would have avoided loss of income or deception if they had not trusted the wrong sources. Concerning climate science literacy, the definition is to understand on our influence on climate and climate's influence on us and our society. UNESCO aims to challenge the influx of understandings and misunderstandings about climate science. So, this information about climate change in particular is produced or distributed by agents who intend to harm rather than serve the public interest. For example, the most dangerous fake news being repeated in commercial media, social media, and now government-sponsored media is the denial of human-caused climate change. For example, fossil fuels companies spend billions buying rights to drill for oil and gas all over the world, must not be allowed to continue. Our plans are to provide information about climate change, and particular explanations of why it occurs, and can enhance people's acceptance of science. Second, highlighting the scientific consensus can be effective means to counter misinformation and raise public acceptance. And third, culturally aligned messages and messengers are more likely to be successful. Concerning sustainability education, promotes eco-citizenship, which means embodying sustainable behaviors and cultural practices that shape and promote ecological values within the connected realms of society, economy, and environment. Ecomedia literacy supports learners to make sense of how everyday ecomedia practice impacts our ability to live sustainably within Earth's ecological parameters for the present and future. Ecomedia literacy proposes that media literacy can highlight how on a daily basis we encounter the interrelationship between media and living systems. Well, media literacy provides authentic learning opportunities for cross-curricular exploration across grade levels. Through media literacy, students may cultivate their own ability to question their environment and to analyze and interpret texts. Seminars will give them the link to media literacy from theory to practice. Some synergies our library has developed with IFLA, the International Federation of Library Associations, the Greek Library Association, and the Public Library of Thessaloniki. We will host during 2025 an exhibition translated in Greek. We are now on a process of the translations concerning political influence, online scams, online harassments, and stereotype amplification. In the Public Library of Thessaloniki will be under our supervision. And the basic idea is theoretical training combined with reliable resources and practice. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. And I'm the last speaker, and I will try to give the participants' point of view, because it's very important for our library to know what we are doing. You know, while we provide and we give so much effort in organizing, in differentiating, in thinking different ideas, innovative ideas concerning the literacy. But what do we actually do? This is what we want, because you know it's a fact that information literacy is significant. It's a must, because it develops skills that are very important for the students from the very early ages of their student life up to their working life. They need to have this kind of skills. So ever since we developed the information literacy program, we are in a constant communication with students, with all the participants, and not only students, but with all the participants from the outer area of Thessaloniki and other places, because it's a program that we provide to all our members, registered members. So every year, ever since 1999, we try to cooperate with the students, with our members, with the faculty members. So right now, we have reached the point that we provide seminars for research methodology and academic resources, for bibliographic standards and writing tools, for writing and presenting an essay,
for plagiarism, of course, for misinformation in academic resources. We have cooperations within our community, academic community, with the Department of Statistics, Computerization and Informatics, with the Career Office. We have 2 seminars together with the Career Office, with the faculty members, and with the Committee for Research Ethics of the University of Macedonia. We also provide ad hoc seminars through our liaison program. The faculty members come to us and say, please, can you organize a seminar for this subject, for this thematic area? We also started the secondary school approach. Actually, just today, in very early today, we had the first secondary school, the German School of Thessaloniki, the final grade of high school that came in here and were informed about the information literacy seminar of our library. So, as I have already told you, all registered members of the library have the right to take part in these information literacy seminars. Throughout the year, it's conducted either in person or online. We have 2 ways of providing the seminars. They just have to fill an application to participate. It's nothing difficult. And all they have to do is attend and finish a quiz, so that we know from our side that they are okay. Their knowledge is adequate in order to have these abilities and these skills in their diploma supplement. Diploma supplement is, as you already know, is just another supplement to their main diploma, where everything additional to their normal student life is added there. So it's a very good motivation for students to attend to these seminars. And of course, they have, after they finish everything, they have to fill in a questionnaire. That it is online, it's on our library site, and it is optional. It's not obligatory to fill it in, but it's something that we have to know what they actually need. So do we meet their needs, the areas of their satisfaction? Do they like our teaching abilities? Are the instructors okay? And what about our organization? Do they need something different? So, this data that I'm going to show you right now is from this academic year, 23-24. We organized 40 educational seminars. Around 1,300 participants were at these seminars, and 440 filled in the questionnaire. There are 12 questions, open and closed, regarding all these 3 key areas that I already mentioned. So what do we know? First of all, we know that most of the students are undergraduate students. They have the need, coming from the higher education, they have the need to learn something more. Postgraduate students are a big part of our community, but not so big as the undergraduate students. And for the first time, we didn't have any external users. We usually do have, but for the first time, we didn't have external users. As far as the information on how do they know about the seminars, how do we communicate? The main channels, the library channels, that is our newsletter and our website, are those that inform most the library audience. We give very much of an effort to our library social media accounts, but something seems to go wrong. It's something that we do try and make an effort to find out what goes wrong, because we have many followers, but we don't interact, and it seems that they don't learn things about us. They don't get informed. I don't know how it's something that we should search in the future research. Why do they participate? what do they want from us? They definitely want something about learning. They want to broaden their skills, their knowledges. They want to cover their research needs as a student. They need help with their essays. But a big percentage, as I have already told, is because they want to add these skills to their diploma supplement. Something that shows that they have some kind of doubtness about their working life after they finish their student life. And how about us? What do we do right? What do we do wrong? The instructors. They seem to be very satisfied by our knowledge, what we offer, what we have to offer. How do we deliver the message? Is it okay? Do they like our position, our language, our everything? How do we communicate? How do we cooperate with them? How kind we are, how willing we are to answer to their questions, to give them, to give advice, to be aware of what they need, and how do we organize everything? About our educational techniques, presentation, practice, brainstorming, these are three basic that we use. We see that they find very adequate these educational techniques, but we do have a 33% that we take into consideration that they think they are adequate. We would like to be very adequate. So continuing our this questionnaire, and in comparison with some other questions that we will see furthermore, and we understand something that, of course, they need the duration of the seminars, which is two hours, is adequate and very adequate, okay? But the 36% adequate and neutral is something that we have to consider again. But combining these two answers with the question that we have, what kind of interventions would you like to do to improve these seminars? They need more practice. So these educational techniques might be not so adequate. That's why they say just adequate. They need more detailed analysis, and they need longer duration of the seminars. We saw before that they find it adequate or very adequate. So something it coincides. Everything, this kind of answers coincides. We have this option other to write down what they need more. So they said that they need more specialized seminars. We have a seminar combining bibliographic standards and this tool for automating the bibliography Zotero. So they need a specialized seminar. They need more conversations, and this comment was for our mis and disinformation new seminar. It was a very live audience, and they wanted to speak more, but we didn't have time. So we either have to divide it in two, or we have to make something different. It's something to consider. And of course, the opportunity to elaborate on personal needs for their essays. Something that we have to think how we can organize it, perhaps make a session, 1 hour session, open, live, for anyone who has something to ask, so that he can come to us and discuss it. In total, the participants are satisfied by everything they learned, but we see that very adequate and adequate, as you can understand, we want the very adequate answers. So the 37% of adequate is not good for us. We need to make it better. And in general, their satisfaction are very much. They are very satisfied. It's a questionnaire that it has positive vibes. In general, we get positive vibes. We get positive signs, but there is always room for improvement. every year we focus on the participants' observations, we do changes, we make changes. What we understand is that we cannot make everyone be satisfied. Every year we have something different that we include in our seminars. It depends, of course, on the available human resources to make changes and to create something new and successful. Thank you very much for your attention.
We have reached the end of the third International Student Conference, during which we heard a multitude of different and outstanding speeches, such as on UNESCO's action plan against online misinformation, the pillars for MIL cities, UNESCO's actions related to influencers and content creators, the right to education, the implementation of MIL through UNESCO's program. Among other topics, we discussed the significance of educational policy and MIL in the context of UNESCO's guidelines for teacher education, the contrast between MIL and fact-checking, the UNESCO Creative Cities and Learning Cities Network, and much more. We concluded that education is a fundamental pillar of the European Union's policy, with its agenda expanding to include issues of social cohesion and active citizenship. We analyzed European policy initiatives related to MIL and the importance of education in promoting intercultural competence. We discussed how hate speech exacerbated by the digital age affects social cohesion and requires multifaceted approaches to combat it, with education playing a crucial role in strengthening resilience. This is achieved through transformative education, which includes education for global citizenship, digital education, MIL, emotional learning, and human rights education in line with UNESCO's guidelines. Through exploratory research on MIL in Greece, it was revealed that educators support holistic approaches but underestimate the importance of MIL education. Finally, we learned that the Library of the University of Macedonia has integrated seminars on misinformation and is developing collaborations with organizations like IFLA, while the results of an evaluation study of the informatics program show high satisfaction, but also needs for improvement in organizing seminars and educational methods. Now it is time to end the seminar. Thank you all very much for your participation and attention.